Stop overthinking. How to know if you're trans without driving yourself crazy. There's a strange kind of mental loop many people fall into when they start questioning their gender identity. It begins with a small flicker of curiosity, maybe a passing thought while watching a movie, or a twinge of recognition when you meet someone openly trans or non-binary. But instead of sitting with that thought, it snowballs. You start analyzing every memory you've ever had. You dig through childhood photos, trying to find clues. You replay moments in your mind, wondering if that feeling you had at age 9 meant something. Before long, you're running in circles, bouncing between certainty and doubt so fast it's dizzying. You're not just questioning anymore, you're overthinking. The truth is, gender questioning can feel like one of the most high-stakes puzzles you'll ever try to solve, especially because it's so personal. But ironically, the harder you try to think your way to an answer, the more elusive that answer becomes. It's like trying to catch your own reflection in rippling water. The more you stir, the blurrier it gets. And this mental noise can become exhausting. You might start to wonder if you're just making it all up, if maybe you're not trans enough, or if you look foolish later for even considering it. That inner voice of doubt can be ruthless, whispering things like, what if I'm just confused? What if I regret it? What if I'm being dramatic? What we rarely talk about is how common this overthinking trap really is. So many trans and questioning people have been there, scrolling through forums late at night, searching for the one sign that will finally prove things one way or the other. And here's the twist. There is no magic checklist that can tell you exactly who you are. Your gender identity isn't a math equation you solve. It's a lived experience you feel. The answer isn't hiding in an obscure online quiz. It's in the patterns of your own life, in the way you move through the world when you stop trying to force yourself into someone else's mold. In reality, clarity often comes when you give yourself permission to stop hunting for a definitive label and instead start noticing how different possibilities make you feel. Do you feel more at ease imagining yourself with a different name, pronoun, or presentation? Do certain changes in your life feel like relief instead of effort? These subtle emotional shifts can be far more telling than an endless mental interrogation. And here's the kicker. Sometimes the only way to know is to try, to experiment, to give yourself safe spaces to explore without the pressure of having it all figured out. So if you've been stuck in that mental merry-go-round, questioning your gender on a loop, know that you're not broken, indecisive, or alone. You're navigating something deeply human. And there is a way forward that doesn't involve driving yourself to the brink with overanalysis. Recognize the spiral of overthinking, breaking free from the loop of constant questioning. There's a particular kind of mental exhaustion that comes from circling the same thoughts over and over again. When it comes to questioning your identity, especially something as deeply personal as your gender, it's easy to fall into a spiral of overthinking without even realizing it's happening. It usually starts with a small question. Am I trans? Am I non-binary? Am I cis but just uncomfortable? At first, the curiosity feels productive. You're exploring, learning, and trying to understand yourself. But soon, that curiosity starts feeding on itself. Every answer you come up with gets pulled back into the question, like water being sucked down a drain. The loop goes something like this. You have a thought about your gender, you analyze it to death, you reach a conclusion, and then, almost immediately, you doubt it. Maybe you convince yourself you were overreacting. Or maybe you tell yourself you were just imagining things. And so you start over. Same questions, same doubts, same exhausting process. The more you repeat this cycle, the less clarity you have, because you're never giving yourself time to actually live with your answers before tearing them apart again. The danger of this mental loop is that it masquerades as progress. You might think, if I keep thinking about it, eventually I'll figure it out. But the reality is, constant re-questioning can keep you stuck in place. You're not moving toward understanding, you're running laps in the same mental stadium. And the worst part? It robs you of peace of mind. Instead of focusing on how you feel in the present, you're trapped in a never-ending game of mental what-ifs. Breaking out of the spiral starts with recognizing it for what it is, a cycle, not a solution. Overthinking isn't giving you new insights anymore. It's feeding your anxiety and muddying the waters. The truth is, identity is rarely something you can purely think your way into. More often, clarity comes from experience, trying things out, noticing how they feel, and giving yourself space to process without the pressure of constant analysis. One way to disrupt the loop is to set boundaries with your own thoughts. For example, you might decide that once you've reached a conclusion for the day, you won't rehash it until a set amount of time has passed. This isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about giving them room to breathe without immediately smothering them and second-guessing. It's also important to remind yourself that your identity doesn't have to be locked in for you to start exploring it. You can use different pronouns, try out new forms of self-expression, or connect with communities without signing a lifelong contract. Exploration is not a trapdoor, it's a stepping stone. If you find yourself stuck in the spiral, remember, overthinking might feel like control, but it's actually a cage. Focus on lived experiences, not just labels, discovering yourself through real-life moments. When you're questioning your identity, it's tempting to believe the answer lies in finding the perfect label. You might spend hours online reading definitions, comparing them, dissecting the differences between similar terms, and hoping that one day, you'll stumble across a word that feels like it was made for you. But here's the thing, labels can be useful, yet they're only part of the picture. They describe an experience, they don't create it. And if all your energy is poured into searching for that one correct definition, you might be missing the most important part of self-discovery, actually living it. Your lived experiences are the real evidence of who you are. They're the moments when you feel most comfortable in your own skin, or the times you feel strangely out of place. They're the quiet emotional shifts that happen when you hear a certain pronoun used for you, or when you look in the mirror wearing something that feels right, in a way you can't quite explain. These moments aren't abstract theories. They're tangible pieces of your truth. And they hold far more weight than any single paragraph you'll find on a website. Think about it this way. If you're trying to figure out whether you enjoy swimming, reading the definition of swimmer isn't enough. You have to actually get into the water and notice how it feels. Identity works in much the same way. You can read every definition of transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, or cisgender 100 times, but those words won't click in a meaningful way until you compare them to your own day-to-day experiences. Start paying attention to your emotional reactions in different scenarios. How do you feel when someone uses your current name versus a different one? Do certain clothes make you feel more like yourself, while others feel like a costume you're forced to wear? What happens when you imagine yourself being perceived differently by others? Does that thought bring relief, excitement, discomfort, or indifference? These are not just passing feelings, they're clues. This approach also removes the pressure of getting it right from day one. You don't need to declare your label before you've explored what fits. You can try using different pronouns in a safe space with trusted friends, or experiment with new forms of self-expression without having to commit to a final identity. Sometimes, the act of trying is what reveals the truth, much more than reading or theorizing ever could. The beauty of focusing on lived experience is that it's personal, flexible, and deeply authentic. Labels may shift over time, but the way you feel in certain situations will always guide you toward what's real for you. It's not about rejecting labels entirely. It's about letting them follow your experience, rather than forcing your experience to fit a pre-existing label. Give yourself permission to explore without pressure. Identity discovery is a journey, not a time test. When it comes to figuring out who you are, there's an unspoken pressure that creeps in from everywhere. Social media, friends, family, and even your own expectations. It's that little voice saying, "You should have this figured out by now." It makes you feel like identity is a deadline you're already late for, as if there's a clock ticking down and you're racing to choose the right answer before time runs out. But here's the truth, identity isn't a time test. It's not about speed, it's about authenticity. And authenticity takes time to unfold. The idea that you have to know exactly who you are before you're allowed to live differently is one of the biggest myths in self-discovery. In reality, the process often works in the opposite direction. You explore, you try things out, and in doing so, you gather experiences that help you understand yourself better. Certainty doesn't come before the journey, it grows out of it. Giving yourself permission to explore without pressure means letting go of the fear that you're somehow wrong or experimenting. You're not lying to anyone by trying out a new pronoun, wearing different clothes, or imagining yourself in a different role. You're collecting data, emotional, personal data, on how each choice feels. If something doesn't fit, you can change it. That's not failure, that's learning. Think about it like learning a new skill. No one expects you to play an instrument perfectly the first time you touch it. You practice, make mistakes, and slowly develop a sense of what works for you. Identity exploration is no different. You can experiment without needing to declare the final result on day one. This also means allowing your identity to shift and evolve without shame. What feels right today might feel different in a year, and that's okay. Growth doesn't make your past experiences invalid. It simply means you've learned more about yourself. This flexibility is a strength, not a weakness. It's proof that you're listening to yourself instead of forcing yourself into a rigid box. It's also worth remembering that external pressure, whether it's the demand to pick a side or to justify every choice, can distort your process. The goal isn't to meet someone else's timeline, it's to meet yourself where you are. You don't owe anyone a perfectly packaged explanation. You owe yourself honesty, patience, and room to breathe. So take the pressure off. You don't have to have your identity figured out before you start living it. You can explore at your own pace, in small or big steps, without rushing toward a final label. The freedom to experiment without fear is what allows you to find clarity that feels real, not forced. Your identity isn't a multiple-choice question with only one correct answer. It's a journey you're walking, one step at a time. Limit social media comparison. Your journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It's easy to forget, when scrolling through social media, that what you're seeing is not reality. It's a curated highlight reel. This is especially true when it comes to identity and self-discovery. If you're questioning your gender or exploring what it means to be trans, the online world can feel like both a blessing and a trap. On one hand, it gives you access to other people's stories, language, and experiences that might resonate with you in powerful ways. On the other hand, it can quietly plant unrealistic expectations about what your own journey should look like. The danger lies in comparison. You watch someone share their dramatic before and after transformation, and you wonder why your own feelings don't seem as clear or as certain. You see a trans person online who says they knew from the moment they could talk, and you start doubting yourself because your story isn't the same. Or you see someone who transitioned quickly, confidently, and visibly, and you feel like you're moving too slowly, like you're somehow less valid because your process is quieter, slower, or more complicated. But here's the thing, being trans, or questioning if you are, doesn't have a single, uniform template. There's no timeline, no checklist, and no single way to look or feel trans. Every person's relationship to their gender is shaped by countless factors: culture, upbringing, safety, mental health, access to resources. And those differences mean no two stories will ever be identical. When you compare your journey to someone else's curated online story, you're not comparing reality to reality. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. And that's never a fair match. Social media often leaves out the messy parts. The uncertainty, the bad days, the slow progress, the compromises people make in private because of safety or circumstances. You're seeing the result, not the process. Limiting comparison doesn't mean cutting yourself off from community. It means using it wisely. It's absolutely okay to take inspiration from other people's stories, but don't use them as a ruler to measure your worth or validity. Instead, focus on how your own experiences feel in real life, offline. Pay attention to what brings you relief, comfort, or joy, not to whether your journey looks like someone else's Instagram post. You might even find it helpful to take breaks from certain kinds of content if they leave you feeling inadequate or pressured. Surround yourself with voices that remind you there's no right way to be trans, and that your path is just as real and valid whether it's loud and visible or private and gradual. Your story is yours for a reason. It's shaped by your life, your needs, and your pace. The goal isn't to match someone else's version of authenticity. It's to create your own. Seek supportive conversations, finding clarity through safe and honest dialogue. When you're deep in the process of questioning your identity, your mind can start to feel like an echo chamber. Every thought bounces around, getting louder the more you hear it. You replay the same doubts, fears, and what if so many times that they start to feel like facts. In moments like this, the most powerful thing you can do is step outside of your own head and into a conversation with someone you trust. Supportive conversations are not about having someone else decide who you are. They're about finding a safe place to express what's been living in your mind, unfiltered and without fear of judgment. Sometimes, simply putting your thoughts into words helps you hear them in a new way. A friend, a fellow LGBTQ+ community member, or a therapist can reflect things back to you, ask gentle questions, and help you notice patterns you might be too close to see. Talking to someone who understands, or is at least open to understanding, can also give you permission to be unsure. When you're alone with your thoughts, you might feel pressured to have answers before you speak them aloud. But in the right space, you can say, "I don't know yet," and have that be completely okay. That freedom to explore without a demand for certainty can be deeply calming. The LGBTQ+ community, whether in person or online, can be an especially valuable resource because so many members have walked similar paths. They know what it's like to wrestle with questions of identity and to face both internal and external pressures. They can share their own stories, not to tell you who you should be, but to remind you that there's no single, right, way to figure yourself out. Hearing the variety of experiences can help dismantle the idea that your journey has to look a certain way to be valid. Therapists, especially those trained in LGBTQ plus affirming care, can offer a structured space to sort through your thoughts. They're trained to listen without imposing their own agenda, and they can give you tools to manage anxiety, navigate uncertainty, and focus on what feels authentic for you. A good therapist won't push you toward any particular label or outcome. They'll support you in discovering your truth at your own pace. The important thing is to choose people who make you feel safe, respected, and heard. If someone dismisses your feelings, rushes you toward an answer, or makes you feel small for asking questions, they're not the right person for these conversations. Supportive dialogue should leave you feeling lighter, clearer, or at least less alone, not more confused or judged. You don't have to carry the weight of identity discovery by yourself. Sharing your thoughts with others can break the loop of overthinking, offering new perspectives and a reminder that you are not isolated in your journey. Sometimes, clarity doesn't come from thinking harder, it comes from being heard. So, after all this, what's the real takeaway? It's that questioning your gender doesn't have to be a mental tug-of-war. You don't need to solve your identity like a riddle before you're allowed to explore it. You don't have to have perfect certainty to try on a name, a pronoun, or a new way of presenting yourself. And you definitely don't need to keep replaying the same doubts in your head as if sheer analysis will spit out an answer. If anything, one of the biggest lessons people learn when they step out of the overthinking spiral is that self-discovery is not a one-day event. It's an ongoing process. There's no final stamp of approval that says, "Congratulations, you're officially trans," or "You're officially not." There's just you, learning, experimenting, and living. And the beauty of that is you get to notice how each choice feels in real life, not just in your imagination. When you let go of the pressure to know right now, you give yourself permission to grow into your truth naturally. Some people find that experimenting with small changes, like using a different pronoun in a trusted space, opens a door they didn't know existed. Others discover that the feelings they thought were just curiosity run deeper than they ever imagined. And sometimes, people realize their gender questioning led them somewhere different from where they expected, and that's valid too. The key is to remember that your identity is not an exam you can fail. You're not going to get it wrong by exploring. What matters most is listening to your inner sense of comfort and authenticity. Those quiet moments when you feel most like yourself. They might not shout, but they're there, guiding you. And those moments can't be forced into existence by overthinking. They emerge when you allow yourself to experience life beyond the confines of your mental checklist. If you've been stuck in a cycle of doubt, remind yourself that uncertainty doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're exploring. And every explorer starts somewhere, often with nothing but a question and the courage to follow it. The fact that you're even engaging with these thoughts means you're paying attention to yourself in a way many people never do. That's not weakness, that's self-awareness. So take a deep breath. Step away from the endless Google searches, the late-night forums, and the self-interrogations. Instead, give yourself space to be, to live in your body, to try things without judgment, and to see where your feelings lead you. Your gender is part of you, not a puzzle separate from you. And when you stop trying to solve yourself like a problem, you might just find that the answers have been there all along, waiting for the noise to quiet down. This is your journey, and you get to walk it in the way that feels right for you. Trust that with time, patience, and self-compassion, clarity will come.